First off, if you've not seen it yet, over on my Daily Motion page, I have completed my look at the Toy Spider-Man series. It's 3 videos, it's been released over the last few weeks, and I thought it was an interesting show. Just take a look at those videos if you haven't already. Not this week, next week over on my Daily Motion page, I will be beginning a look at Shoriki Sentai O-Ranger, which just released earlier this month from Shout Factory. But onto the topic of currently live releasing tokusatsu stuff. Jyuohger is more, I shouldn't say more continuing, but finally giving Bud's backstory, and it's pretty much as we thought. A man who, I don't think it was specifically stated, but I believe to be Yamato's father, fell into the Jyuland, and Bud found him, nursed him back to health, but after he was injured, but due to Juman laws, they were supposed to immediately be taken to the palace, but what actually happens when they do that is they're imprisoned to keep that location a secret because they're very xenophobic and distrustful. Apparently, Yamato got lucky when he was immediately found by the guardians of the Link Cube, that are his current friends, and that so much didn't happen with him. I guess more balanced heads prevailed. That or what Bud did was such a serious violation of the principles that they just did it in the first place. But they said there have been other incidents where humans have been summarily murdered after being imprisoned due to their xenophobic laws, and yeah, it's a mess. That's kind of contrasting against what we've seen from the rest of the immediate main cast, and it gives Kohei Murakami's character a very good reason to be distrustful and isolationist, and pretty much justifies every single thing about his character in that, while it is initially seemed malicious and contradictory to what Yamato had believed about the Birdman, in hindsight makes total sense from his actions of just wanting, while it's inconvenienced the 4 that are there, and Larry, what he's done is ultimately prevented any further tragedies like what happened to his friend, and keeping the internal corruption of the Zuman isolated from anyone else it can hurt. So that completely works. And also what works here is Yamato endeavoring to break through to him in that the Monarch's emblem that he gave Yamato wasn't just to keep them isolated, because, hey, without all 6 of them, they break the connection, they can't use the cubes. But, what's the phrase I was using? But it's contrasting against Yamato's experience of that item bringing him and his friends together to help people as he has. So it's like a contrast in ideologies that eventually Yamato is proven right. But what amuses me with this is that this is the exact thing that Bangre was trying to rob Yamato of, that connections are a crutch, a weakness, you shouldn't believe in them, and here's the one that allowed him to bridge those connections, telling him that he originally gave it to him so he could cut himself off, cut away that connection to his people. So it's a lot more of a, I shouldn't say so much it's a personal betrayal, but it's been one of the foundations of that philosophy of his that was admittedly grown through his parents, but that object has helped the evolution of that so much over the series that you see how that might have been a bit of a crisis of faith for a few minutes there. And sadly, they don't have enough time in the episode to explore that, mainly as, well, Yamato's already been through the worst that Bangre could deal with him. I don't realistically think that this jaded older person that has a good validation for being that way would so fall off of it. So it's more like a rekindling of how that connection he lost isn't just gone. And with how he brings Bud to see the others all fight together and succeed, and ultimately have Bud join the rest of them for a short time in the battle. And unfortunately, no, he's not joining up with them full time, even though we have like between 10 and 12 episodes of the show left. But we'll probably see him in a battle 2 or 3 more times, since he's officially slotted as the Extra Ranger. But yeah, this was a good way to introduce him, address his backstory, and how it relates to the greater lore for Jyuland, and how it's tying into the xenophobia first teased with Ketas when they retrieved the whale change gun. Meaning that there's more lore expansion to this coming, most likely during the big Christmas event in a few weeks, or as the series concludes. So, it's important stuff here, all things considered, that ties into this. I think it would have been better to flip-flop the two in relation to the previous episode where they lit into this. You know, kind of delay the actual Zuo Bird debut a bit further, so there could be a bit longer of a extended battle with its introduction, and more focus on the lore aspects to like give a tease at the middle of the episode, the middle of the two-parter, sorry, and not just give it to us a bit of the way into the second part of it without a proper lead-in. It would have added a bit more of a dramatic tension to all of that, and possibly given a bit more time to elaborating on it. Of course, I was right about the monster just cloning itself. Except it's not really cloning, it's resurrecting from its own body its sibling, even though the whole sibling thing is they have the exact same memories and everything, but their replication power is only limited to 2. If they're down to 1, another just generates and seems to have the same memories, so it's not like they're that much different. They are pretty much clones, instead of just saying resurrection through body horror. But yeah, the keys to them is they need to beat them at the same time, and Yamato and Bud definitely have some great synchronized fighting with the two. Definite praise to the stunt director on this one, with how in sync all the movements were for everyone in this. It was a pretty nice way to show off the new hero properly, even though he's, not going to be around. So he nonetheless has a good showing, and yes. Of course, that leaves us with more questions at the end of it, with how is Jyuland corrupt, aside from just killing everyone that's there, how Jyuland came to be formed as their isolated paradise, and, it leaves me with more questions I want answered, but at least it's put to rest some of the ones that we had right now, which is really the way it should be going. Ex-Aid, though, it's better than last week, but the complaints from last week are still not absent. How should I explain this? They encounter another person who has 2 of the stolen Gashots fused into him, which, as I said before, it would have been better to leave all 4 of the host Gashots being used for the same victim, which would lead into Taiga's backstory. Instead, these ones lead off into more exploring Kujo. Now, as I said when his debut episode came along and he went about lying to Yamato, it's like, you didn't need to lie to him to get his help in fighting off a Bugster-infected friend, dude. And yeah, this is kind of showing, what's the phrase? Karma for that. In that, the patient that's the host for the two Bugster Gashot things parallels another thing of his own backstory where, yes, he did lose a friend to an illness. It was just not game syndrome and the whole Bugster incident. It's just that him telling the truth resulted in his friend dying in an accident, presumably choosing to kill himself because of the diagnosis Kujo gave him, and Kujo's felt guilty about that, and that's why he lies, to protect himself and others from harmful truths. Now, what we're seeing from this is that the lies he tells aren't actually doing any better because they're causing people to be distrustful of him when, he's trying to be nice and helpful, and it's backfiring as much as telling the truth would, especially since they pull a whole secrets and lies gambit this episode with Genom. A few interesting details I saw in this is that the Gaming Writer's level select system allows them to... I don't think it's full teleportation, because initially they're in the quarantine room and, what's his name? Kagami's father warns them that they're destroying the quarantine room with their fighting of the Bugster, but then they use the level select button to change them to a seaside location, and apparently that frees them from the potential of destroying the quarantine room, but also then suddenly lets the Black Ex-Aid, aka Genom, into likewise counter the efforts of Kagami and Emu in countering the Bugsters and trying to reclaim the Gashots. Now, is this showing us that this is like isolating them in a holodeck so that only the others with the gaming system or are like Asuna can be rendered into it, so it like isolates them from real space in like a pocket dimension or something? Or is it actually teleporting them to this different location? I want to say it's more of the holodeck hardlight hologram spatial distortion thing, because after the level select thing dissipates, they're back in their previous location. But it's not consistent for either of those, since where did Genom enter from this? Did he just use the same level select feature to home in on their location? Is it consistent between all of the gaming writers if that they're in close enough proximity that they'll easily be teleported to any active level select area? This bugs me and I don't know why. But yeah, Genom interferes with them retrieving either of the level 3 Gashots from the host until Kujo gets involved, saying he's telling the truth and wants to help today, which of course they're not exactly trustful of him considering last time. But he teases them with the true identity of Genom, and he actually does give up the true identity of Don as Genom. Problem is that Graphite pulls a bait and switch after they actually beat up Genom, so that he appears from the fires of the explosion with Don nowhere to be seen and wearing the driver and holding the Gashot. So Kujo's now out with them because even when he's telling the truth, they now think he's lying. I actually like this twist as it's providing karma for his previous actions. And hey, it's softening the character so that you understand the reason why he is a liar and you see that it's being recognized as him being self-sabotaging. So it mediates the previous episode, but not in a way which won't allow for further character development. and leaves open the door for Kujo to go, "See, I told you I was right. They tricked you that time I was trying to tell you the truth." And all that down the line, which presumably will be happening after the Christmas episode if if the episode preview titles are any indication. Level 3 Kamen Rider Laser, Giri Giri Chambara. It's a samurai-themed game, so he becomes more of an armored samurai. He legitimately looks the best of all the gaming riders right now, even with, the neon greenish, not quite neon green, it's more yellow, neon yellow, not even neon yellow, but it's this odd color of yellow I'm having trouble pinning down. But the Giri Giri Chambara support Gashot gives him arms and a whole samurai-ish look to him, which actually really works. It's like a technologically advanced one with the whole biker motif still present in the body with how all the limbs attach. And I think he looks excellent. In fact, even with him turning into his own bike, I think that Laser overall has had the best look of all the Ex-Aid riders thus far. Admittedly, I was into the whole cyan thing of Brave, but this definitely is... I just like the aesthetic design to him. And I love that his weapon is the arrow that splits into a pair of sides. That is so totally my thing, and unfortunately from the toy demos I've seen of the Gashkan Sparrow, it's too small for my hands, damn it. Because yeah, I kind of want one. I'd like to save up for them, but with the size issues with my gigantic hands, that's probably not going to be a good idea. But yeah, this definitely makes up for last week. It's a lot better paced. I shouldn't say there's nothing that goes on, because I did address all the major points in this quick wrap-up, but it seems more even than rushing past the important parts. See, last week it was skipping past addressing how meaningful the relationship was with Kagami's girlfriend, how much it affected him. So it did, and since he spent so little time with that, you don't really see the impact of the person on the main character. Here, Kujo's backstory was more addressed, but from the small snippets you get, you see it reflected more in his ongoing actions and how it's consistent with his character, so it has a more, I don't want to say fulfilling, but it's more reflected in the storyline and how it relatedly impacts, because Kujo's off on his own thing. He doesn't need much for all to stay consistent. Whereas Kagami's thing with his dead girlfriend ties into Graphite, it ties into Taiga, it ties into the Root Bugster Day Zero mess, it ties into all of these other things that it really needed more attention to fully validate Kagami's actions, Taiga's actions, the animosity with Graphite, because it's this common thread to all of these people that if it's the weak link, then it doesn't allow all these other factors that the story is going to hinge on for the interlapping conflicts to hold as well. The story hinges on this one thing they barely addressed, whereas this other aspect with Kujo is more exploring his character. You see the difference in execution between the two that I'm trying to describe? I'm off the top of my head, I'm usually not that good at describing my critiques and why one thing might work and the other might not work. Again, I'm not very good with talking outside of the scripts that I write. Trying to find another way to describe that. Okay, simple way to describe this. It's a load-bearing... The whole Saki thing with Kagami and the others is it's a load-bearing aspect to the plot, so the stronger it is, the more it can carry, whereas if it's weak, if it's barely there, if it's a thin thread that needs to tie together strong chains, it's going to snap under the weight and pressure, whereas this is just one thread amongst a bunch of others that are all tying into the same person. It's more supported by other showcasing of character, whereas the thing with Saki can't support all the tying story points due to not having enough time to address it. I'm not trying to dwell on this, I'm just showing the different executions from one episode to the next. And the thing that's odd, though, is all of Ex-Aid thus far has had the same writer. It's the same head writer. It's, I have the page open right here. Yuya Takahashi. He hasn't had any secondary writers thus far. Last week, Yuya Takahashi, same thing. So it's like, it's odd that he's not allowed the time for this other story point, whereas Kujo, who's admittedly in the background of the other five, he's the literal fifth wheel despite being the motorcycle guy thus far, and you don't need as much with him thus far since you're addressing it in pieces around the larger whole of the story, whereas he's not doing as well in maintaining the backstory of everyone else and how it ties into the now. So it's not actually bad at this point, it's just that I'm concerned there might come a time where it all hinges on this one singular aspect, and as it's not been fully, as there's so little time addressing it, it might not hold the load it might need to once the story moves further. That's my concern. But otherwise, next week we have Snipe getting up to level 3, and then they're going to be hunting the level 4, level 5 Dragon Hunter X Gashots, which will be getting the 10 initial Gashots out of the way, so then they can either move on to the main gaming story conflict, which I think they should have been addressing before now, giving more attention to that over the collectible items being spaced out a bit further. But what can we do? It's modern Toei. Hopefully, though, after they get the 10th Gashot out of the way, they'll have about 10 episodes of main story stuff before we have to worry about the next super upgrades or whatnot. Okay, that's it for me. 2 weeks from now, just remember to look out for the O-Ranger videos on Dailymotion. Check out the Spider-Man stuff that's on Dailymotion right now, and I will see you all later.